Welcome to Next Generation's First Generation, where Patrick Delmore and Sascha Schaudies take a look back into their favorite childhood show, Star Trek The Next Generation. This is where we attempt to reconcile how we felt as children watching the show and looking back as old farts now in our late 30s, almost 40s.
Hello, and welcome to the fourth season of Next Generation's First Generation, the Star Trek The Next Generation watch-along podcast, where, on the 30th anniversary of the release of each episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, we record a commentary on that episode. I'm Patrick Delmore, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Mr. Sascha Schaudies.
Hello, Patrick. How are you?
And with us also is frequent guest, Nigel.
Well, hello, everybody.
Hey there, Nigel. So what we're doing today, in good faith with the times that are going on, we're doing this over Skype. So we've got all three of us on different computers or cell phones, just kind of recording along. This is the second time we've done this. So we did this with the Best of Both Worlds episode 1. And now we're about to see the recap, or not the recap, but the second half of Best of Both Worlds. Now, if I remember correctly, Patrick, we started out Best of Both Worlds. We, or at least I, kept on fixating on how this is a Riker episode. Riker.
Yep.
And I remember looking at, I would have to say, a couple of minutes, maybe about 15-20 minutes of the episode, and it's a different Riker, and I'm going to have a lot of fun making comments on that. So anyway, as the format of the show goes, go ahead and cue up your viewing device, and we're going to give you the countdown of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 so you can watch along. So here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1.
Majel Barrett says, last time on Star Trek The Next Generation, which was a new thing. We get used to it, but this was our first major two-parter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Who did you say said that, the intro?
Majel Barrett, the computer voice.
Aha.
She was the wife of Gene Roddenberry, if you remember.
And she played Mrs. Troy.
Yeah. Yeah, she always had a very interesting presence on the show. I kind of saw her as like just kind of friendly, funny comic relief. It was never a bad thing when you saw her show up. Let's put it that way. And if you just remember, in the viewing order, we will have just finished reviewing Menage a Troy, where Troy and Riker and, of course, Mrs. Troy were all stuck on that Ferengi freighter abducted by the captain.
Ah, yes, I remember that episode.
Mm-hmm. So we're still in the recaps. We're seeing everybody running around, shooting Borgs on the Borg ship, and there's the captain in his Steve Jobs outfit there with the black turtleneck.
It was a heck of a summer waiting to see what was going to happen.
No kidding.
I remember my uncle was sure that they were not going to recover Picard. He was like, Picard's done.
Gonna write him right off, huh?
Yep.
Well, the original, the team writing this, we kind of had the same opinion that, well, this will be somebody else's problem next season because some of the staff didn't think that they'd return to the show. And sure enough, they decided to return to the show, and they had to write themselves out of the box from which they put themselves in. So,
and this is when, they had to back off of how powerful they had said the Borg were in order to just be able to save Picard in this episode.
Right.
Because what we understood in the last episode, he was gone. And they'll talk about this a little bit. The Guinan scene kind of goes into it.
Yeah. So we've come out of the recap, and Mr. Riker has decided to go forward with a plan that the Borg know about, and that is burning out the main deflector array by shooting some kind of beam and the Borg ship is unscathed.
Well, they
knew
had
about the
worked on
attack.
it all through the end of the last episode of building up that array to be able to shoot the ship. But Picard knew that they were going to do that and prepared the Borg ship. This is the big conceit of this, is the Borg now have all of Captain Picard's knowledge, including all of the planning that they've made for fighting the Borg.
That is correct. Oh, well,
but we just had our tell is that Picard called Riker number 1. That means there is still a piece of him left in there.
Yeah. So this episode came out September 24th. 1991? 1990?
No, just still 1990.
1990, okay. And this is the kickoff for season number 4, correct?
Yep.
My goodness, we've covered a lot of Star Trek. Holy freaking
smokes.
I
just started the 2nd grade.
Wow.
Yep.
In 1990, yeah, I would have to say I think I was in the 4th grade. Yeah.
Probably in the
third or 4th grade.
Yes,
it was September.
You're probably starting 5th grade.
Yeah, something like that.
Well, what year did
I wasn't along for another couple of years.
I do remember that. So when you were doing homework assignments or writing classroom reports, you'd always put a header on the top of your paper. So the name, the date, the class.
Yes.
And I remember writing September 24th, 1990 and thinking, man, we are living in the freaking future. We're in the 90s.
I remember feeling that too. I mean, that was the year that I learned, what decades were.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. The reason why I remember that date so vividly is not because Star Trek came out on that pivotal date and it was just seared into my memory. That was my birthday, by any chance. I remember a lot from that day, and it was pretty cool. And I absolutely stumbled upon this episode later that night, not realizing that the season was restarting. So back then, I didn't really understand that shows had seasons. I thought, oh, they're just going to make a batch, and then we get to watch Coach for a few months, and then they're going to make another batch. And
I don't think until people started to buy seasons of television shows, which was around 2001, 2002, when everybody kind of had to buy The Sopranos and didn't want to subscribe to HBO, that people understood really what seasons were of TV.
True. I don't know, Nigel, you kind of came into the digital age a little earlier in your life than Patrick and I did. What's your take on all of it?
Well, bear in mind, I largely saw Star Trek in the first wave of reruns. So the concept of seasons was really, really botched for me, because in any given week I could watch episodes from seasons 4, 5, or 3, and that would totally be fine.
Huh.
I recall that I actually do remember Best of Both Worlds 1 and 2, because I thought it was kind of weird that they did 2 in order.
Oh, it's often... Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. I was just going to say it was. I do remember we'd get the edition of the Seattle Times. We'd go to the TV guide. We'd look up the TV schedule and see what Star Trek episodes were going to be listed. And I believe this was the first time I ever saw part 1 and part 2 of a TV show.
Yeah, a lot of times they, when this comes out, they show them back to back. It's often, it's kind of like it's so good you don't want to split it up. And I remember specials on television where they would just do the 2 hours. So where are we in the episode here? They are talking to...
So Riker has just gotten his field promotion to captain. He is the captain of the Enterprise. They are to consider Picard a casualty of war. They're not to attempt to recover him. He's supposed to join the fleet at Wolf 359, where they will be making their stand against the Borg, and the Klingons are coming to help out as well. But everybody is about 6 days away from reaching that point. Now, here's some more retroactive continuity is showing really the struggle that Picard is going through with having this happen to him. Because they would have had you believe before this that you're taken, there's nothing of you left. But you can see some really good facial acting here. He's not to put too fine a point on it. He's being raped.
Yeah. There's not much he can do. He just sits there and takes it. I bet you they didn't even give him an aspirin.
So here's Riker is doing his quick deciding on who's going to be first officer of the ship. It's interesting that Worf is in consideration.
Well, I thought that Data was in natural line of succession, and then
Correct.
Shelby came along.
He is the second officer, yes.
Hmm.
So they have 3 lieutenant commanders on the ship now: Geordi, Shelby, and Data.
Right. Boy, I would have loved to see Geordi in charge on this episode.
Actually, I think Shelby is a full commander. I should rephrase that. So 2 lieutenant commanders and a full commander, and she is the one that gets the promotion. Geordi is. If Geordi is considered, he's considered off screen. And as we've talked about, I just have this feeling that Geordi and Riker have a relationship off screen that's a lot of Riker will show up and just let loose on whatever issue he's having that he doesn't want to talk about with Troy on Geordi.
Yeah.
And Geordi's got to sit there and be like, yeah. And so the next person that's like, hey, should I bring up such and such with Riker? Yeah, I wouldn't.
So whereas if he vents to the guy and then she's going to give him a good stern talking to. If he vents to Troy, she's going to encourage him to face the conflict. Whereas if he vents to Geordi, he's just going to give him oh yeah, man, I totally get you.
Mm-hmm.
So here the Shelby and Riker drama arc kind of comes to the conclusion is that Shelby is still pulling the first officer, attitude. And Riker just pretty much says, keep it up. That's what you need to do as a first officer. And he's kind of doing the passing the torch right here in this conversation. Is that, it is your job to be a pain in the neck, just like I was a pain in the neck to Picard. Oh, and there's Data giving the grim news that we have engaged the Borg on Wharf 359. Now, what I did in the past is I would pause it right here, just about when the Admiral would come online. So you see the ship kind of bouncing and rolling there. And as soon as they lose communication, I would pause it and switch over to the season opener of Deep Space Nine and watch the rest of the battle.
Yes.
And then switch back and finish this episode. So I don't know how nerdy that is, but that's, when you think about it, you don't see a lot of television shows that reference the same exact fictional event from different points of view. So I think that's a first.
Probably on TV for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And especially that it was done 3 years later too.
Right.
That in 3 years it had worked its way so much into the conscience of everybody that this had happened.
It became a known event in the lore. So there's a scene here where Riker's in the conference room considering who will be the first officer. And I think the scene was actually, I suspect that it's been edited out of sequence. I think they meant for this scene to be shown first before Worf and Riker had the conversation in the turbo lift, before Shelby had the conversation with him in engineering.
Not before Shelby had the conversation with him, but maybe before he talked to Worf.
Maybe. But it almost seemed like he kind of already had his mind made up and he was just kind of putting his feelers out. At least that's what I'd be doing.
Yeah, I mean, he's got to make it look like he gave everybody serious consideration.
Yeah.
It's always makes me think of the Brad Neely's commentary for the first Harry Potter movie. It's like he gets that look that your dad gets when he has to take you to buy a new pair of shoes when you're a kid. And he's got to spend all day doing that. And when he finally figures out the pair of shoes you need, he didn't just finally figure that out. He stalled as long as he could.
Which leads to the question, who would you have chosen?
Oh, who would I have chosen?
If I was me or if I was Riker?
If you were you in Riker's position.
Data.
Yeah. I would go the same route. I wonder who can compute faster and better, Data or an individual Borg drone. Who knows?
Who knows?
Oh.
I would have basically had I would have brought Geordi back up to tactical, have him be like, you've been a great chief engineer. Engineering needs to, get put through their paces. I need you back at the front of the ship.
Well, do you think that would have changed the play out of this episode? Because with Data being in first, second command, or not second command, but number one, basically, and Geordi back in tactical, they would have been tied down in their stations, and you wouldn't have been able to end the episode in Data's lab. So maybe they had to pick Shelby as just through writing convenience and believability.
Exactly. And I think because Riker picked her because he's not gonna feel like he made a decision where he ordered a friend of his to their death.
Yeah.
He could just write it off and go, Shelby wanted to be there.
Mm-hmm. So what's the purpose of this conversation here? This is between Guinan and Riker. I interpret it as a continuation from the conversation at the beginning of the episode where Riker was talking to the Admiral, and the Admiral said this guy is a casualty of war, and you need to forget that he's a part of this equation. Now Guinan is talking to Riker, and Riker's pretty much saying, how do you fight Picard? How do you fight someone who knows you better than you know yourself, et cetera, et cetera. And you see Guinan kind of saying the same thing the Admiral did, was, he's beyond friendship, he's beyond family, and I will let him go.
Basically, you can't think of him as Picard.
Yeah.
She's following the rules of the Borg, is that you have to see him as just the Borg.
Yeah. Well, here it says the only way to save him. I missed that. My mistake. So anyway, Guinan's pretty much pulling the captain's chair out for Riker and forcing him to sit in it and take that emotional responsibility. It's like, you're it, dude. You can't hide in his shadow anymore. And everybody's been right about Riker's career. He is comfortable. So,
well, he's about to see something that's going to justify all the decisions that he's made up till now that I didn't pick up on, because I don't think that they say in the recap the name of the ship that he was assigned to. When they get there, one of the first ships they notice that's been taken out is the ship he was supposed to be first off. He was supposed to be the captain of, which is the Melbourne.
There you go.
So as soon as he sees that, he goes, "No, I've made the right choice by staying on the Enterprise, because I'd be dead right now if I'd gone to the Melbourne. I would have been working with a crew that I didn't know. I wouldn't have been able to get the performance out of them I needed.
And you would have been killed within the first week."
Yep.
Oh, look at that. All that space debris. They did a good job on the remastering, I'll tell you that.
They did.
Looks
I'm a little bit sorry
fantastic.
I'm not watching this on the DVD to see what it actually looked like, because I watched these on Netflix and CBS All Access respectively, and they were both remastered.
So the difference is that the explosions on the hulks floating through space are a lot more defined. There's a lot
See
more
that look?
contrast.
See that look? That's what
Look,
that's the decision right there.
It confirmed he did the right thing to
Yep.
stay behind. Yeah, in the standard definition, this was a very fuzzy, floaty debris field, poor lighting, but you did have more glowing elements, kind of like that right there that you can see, rather than the sharp CGI high contrast explosions that we saw when they first crept in. So here we are. The Enterprise was late for the battle. They were late because why? The deflector dish burned out or something and they couldn't go to warp. I don't know. Technobabble, but they're late to the dance. So they've got to catch up with this cube. They go to the battle bridge. You know, Wesley's looking pretty good for being in red. And I just noticed that 2 people came out of the bathroom there. Not just one. What were they doing in there? Oh. I'm so glad
they're reapplying their makeup.
Yes. Well, someone has to teach you how to use the seashells. I'm really glad that they didn't introduce the Borg Queen. I was just so disappointed when that concept came up. I liked the idea of having a unique leader such as Locutus being the first attempt of the Borg. It shows a big sign of growth for the species and how they operate. But you notice that Locutus isn't really making decisions on his own. He just happens to be the first knowledgeable person, I guess you could say, that they've assimilated that really knows how to take the Federation down. So what does he do? He goes straight to Earth. I think the Dominion tried to do that too. They said, if you really want to capture the Federation, you got to go to Earth first.
Well, and it plays well into the whole idea that the end of season 1 with those bug aliens, that they were supposed to be the Borg to begin with, and then they had to redesign it because it makes sense that because Picard was able to destroy them, he would be the one that they would grab.
Yeah. So why are there such correlations between the Cybermen and the Borg? Has that ever been fleshed out?
Yeah, there's a Doctor Who Star Trek: The Next Generation comic book where the Borg and the Cybermen team up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's got not the Dave Tennant character.
It's Matt Smith.
Yeah, it's Matt Smith. I think I actually have that comic book on my bookshelf. I'll have to go and get it and show it off.
I would have liked it if it had been the 7th Doctor.
Oh, that was Tom Baker?
No, Tom Baker's number 4.
Oh, 7 would have been Mr. Celery.
The guy with the guy that was Radagast the Brown in the Hobbit movie. Can't think of what his name is now. The tip of my tongue, but yeah, he had the kind of the bowler hat on, and he had an umbrella with a question mark. But okay. He was the Doctor when Star Trek: The Next Generation was on. Since the story took place during Star Trek: The Next Generation's airing time, but it made sense for him to be the Doctor in it. But they have a flashback to the Star Trek: The Original Series where they do run into Tom Baker. And even then I was like, no, it shouldn't be Tom Baker. It should be Patrick Troughton.
Yeah. So they've gone forward with their original plan. The saucer section
McCoy, that's the guy's name.
Yes.
Number 7.
They're doing the saucer section and the battle bridge have separated, and they are doing their techno babble firing things, and the Borg are just kind of watching the fireworks. But what is different, you'll see that Worf and Data have been assigned to commando mission mode. And this is a really nice point of view here where you're sitting in the cockpit looking at all this stuff go by in the window.
Yeah.
Makes me think how fast they leave the shuttle base. Makes me think of Fry going to the moon.
Oh, right.
I get to do the countdown.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Oh, we're there.
That Borg weapon does not look like it would be that effective.
That little beam.
Yeah.
I think it was like a tractor beam or a cutting beam or something like that. It obviously looks lost. You can see it jumping around trying to grasp onto something. Worf is totally geeking out here. He's probably thinking, yeah, we are going to be victorious.
We are rushing into battle.
Yep. I've always wanted one of these shuttlecraft. Even since I was a little kid, I was like, I want one of these. I just want to take it and fly around and do cool things. And when I got the technical manual, I was looking for which one had the fastest warp drive, and I'm like, oh, I want that one. And then when Deep Space Nine came out, I just obsessed over the runabouts. So let's see, when Deep Space Nine came out, I was living in Washington, and geez, I think I was 13 at the time, something like that.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, we are shooting at Borg. It's a turkey shoot. Doing it. What? We're shooting Borg. Even back then, I thought that they were just wasting their bullets.
Well, they're not bullets.
Yeah, but there's a guy.
I think phaser recharges on its own.
That's true, but they only have so many shots until they adapt and they get that funny shielding thing.
Yeah.
I'd almost like to see Worf pull some linebacker moves and just rush people. Oh, but you know what? He did that in the first episode of this two-parter, and he bounced right off of the shield, if you remember.
Yeah. Here's something for discussion. So we're looking at about 7 years after Return of the Jedi here, right? Do you think there was some wish fulfillment in maybe people wanted this to be how they got Vader fixed?
Huh.
That the rebels just grabbed him and unplugged all the stuff.
But that wouldn't change who he would be, I guess.
It might.
Boy, I don't know.
I remember this is a Vader that in 1990 we still think Vader is a really old man who slowly became Darth Vader over time. That it didn't happen over an afternoon. And we don't know that he's missing like 3 limbs.
And there might be a little bit
a dude in a robot suit.
And there might be a little bit left of something of him left behind.
Yeah.
They could.
They said that in the movie. That was Luke's whole thing, was that he wanted to recover him. There's still good in Vader. So I'm just thinking these are all, sci-fi nerds. And the Borg design is very Vader with his mask off-esque. So you wonder, is this their wish fulfillment on how they would have liked to have seen the Vader thing go? Like Riker's face
Could
on here.
go either way.
Look at this pathetic guy.
Here's Worf. It's like, well, I'm just standing guard now. That's got to be awkward, standing guard duty over a Borg, just hoping it doesn't twitch.
I'm just imagining now. This is so terrible, but the idea that like Riker is, getting his drink on with like Geordi and O'Brien, and he's like, I walked into Captain's quarters one time. He was in the shower. Turned around and walked right back out. But man, he's just a guy under that uniform, It's just a tiny bit of me lost respect for him. Just a tiny bit. You know what I mean? And they're just like staring at him like, we did not need to hear the story, Commander. Yeah, you're going to listen because I'm the commander.
Well, if it weren't for that rank, I might have not listened.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, we only drink with you because you're our boss.
Oh, man. I've never seen a Borg be so passive like Picard is right now.
He doesn't want to hurt him.
Yeah. Well, then you've got Hugh too. They did that in a cell. They didn't. They already had him secure.
That's because, Picard brought back all the experience of being a Borg. They took from him. He wanted to, and continues to want to take from them.
All right, Nigel, what would you do if you were a Picard right now? You were stuck in a Borg body.
Most likely, so I'm stuck in a Borg's body, but I still have my mind, correct?
Yes.
And I don't suppose some variation of Morse code, my turn-off button is down here, is something I can do?
Yeah, there you go. Why not?
That is what I would do. I'd try and communicate some variation of a message to my number one, and I'd probably... The question is, does Picard think of himself as a casualty of war? Because Guinan thinks so, and so does the Admiral. Does he himself think that? Or does he see himself as a prisoner of war?
I almost like Nigel's... or not Nigel, sorry. I almost like Patrick's comparison. It's almost like an assault where all you can do is just sit back and let this terrible thing happen to you. You're completely powerless. And so I would imagine in the very same way that your consciousness is being repressed forcefully by all this technology.
That's fair.
Now, I would like to say he can exert some control because we saw him cry in that scene in the Borg ship where he's lying down. So if he can cry, that means he might be able to do other things. So I like your idea of blinking out like Morse code almost.
Well, he's on the other side of it. Go ahead, Nigel.
Yeah, just admittedly though, that's me thinking that now. I wasn't in the situation of having Borg parts put on me. Which is a traumatic experience, no matter how you cut it.
He feels like he's on the other side of the mirror. I mean, that scene with him having to watch what the Enterprise is doing from the enemy side is really powerful. Because it's like that's got to be his nightmare, is to just have his hands completely tied. I mean, at least they're performing in a way that he knows that the Borg aren't going to be able to respond negatively to, but still, he's like, I'm supposed to be there, and I'm not anymore, and I probably can't ever go back. So now that he's on the ship, it's still... He probably thinks that he's just going to end up back on the Borg ship. I think he doesn't want to give these people false hope.
Just please let me die. So when you look back historically at the Vietnam War, when they shot down pilots, one of the pilots that they shot down with the orders of making propaganda films, so they would say bad things about the United States and the war effort and blah, blah, blah. But while he was doing this, he was blinking things out in Morse code. And one of the things he'd blunk out was the word torture, just to kind of let him. He's a robot. Yeah, he's a robot. Oh, hey, they brought O'Brien into the party. Look at that. Now, why would they do that? Just we need another technical guy? Another nerd? Hey, this guy can rebuild a transporter because he has absolutely nothing to do. Let's bring him into the lab. Some weird little pod ships.
I love this, the Mars Defense Force.
Just like that, poof, they're gone. Yep. That's kind of like your National Guard unit riding around on horses rather than mobile cavalry there.
And this is probably when they decided to pull back from the Star Wars idea. Is because wouldn't it make sense to, if they really did want to, well, I guess they want to assimilate all of the people that are on Earth. So I would say start with Mars, because Mars is populous.
Yep.
They want to get right to Earth. What I first had in mind was like if they just want to destroy everything, blow up Mars, because that will have massive consequences for Earth.
But they want the prize too. They want the technology, they want the people, but they also want to bring down the bureaucracy. And so the power structure, the Federation, is no different, I feel, than our own views of how governments are organized, is that all the power is centralized in one place, and it kind of delegates instructions and people to different provinces. And if you take that key element out, that central location, it's much more difficult for other areas to organize. Oh, and this is where we learn that Data basically jailbreaks Picard before we know what hacking is. So Data has hooked himself up to Picard, and he's looking around the file system. And oh man, Picard is he is not having it.
Why did that guy do that?
So he could get hit in the shoulder.
I know.
And there's Worf cheating at arm wrestling. Oh no, that's Data.
Yeah. Worf is not actually strong enough to do that.
No, not at all. But Data is. He's the only one who can do it. Oh, and he broke his arm off. Ouch.
That's why you never arm wrestle an android.
How funny would it be if Data's arm came off in that way and he had to switch hands and get the other one?
Yeah. Oh, I suggest the new strategy. Let the captain win.
There's that little transceiver on the top. So back then, they used to use a lot of AM transmitters for short distance robotics on television. They even did this on Doctor Who. If you remember K9, do you remember K9?
I do remember K9.
How about you, Nigel? Have you ever met K9? He's a little robotic dog. He's the sweetest thing, and they drove him around like a little toy RC car, and that's exactly what he was, and he worked off of AM receivers. But the problem was that AM is prone to a lot of interference, so it would just kind of malfunction during the middle of a shot, and they'd have to redo the whole scene because K9 would be jerking or jittering or accidentally taking off when he wasn't supposed to. And I'm like, work with it. Make that part of the script. Just say like, oh, sorry, my electronic dog is as a virus. So Picard's pretty happy. He's reaching out to Data. He's holding hands, saying, I'm here. So to use your through the looking glass or through the mirror analogy, Nigel, would you say, or not Nigel, sorry, Patrick, would you say he's
Pat.
reaching back out? What's the...
Yep.
So why is it that Picard is able to so completely reach out and hold on to Data, where before he was subject to the programming and the strict movements that he had?
Because Data got into the Borg programming and basically said, hey, I can help.
He poked him.
Yeah.
You have to pay attention if you're watching along. Wesley makes the funniest face here. So while Data is hacking into Picard trying to figure out what's going on, Riker's going to set a collision course with the cube. And it's the look on Wesley's face is just kind of like oh, thank God I didn't have to die just then. So I guess my timing's a little off. I thought it was just a few seconds around. We got another minute. All right, Nigel. So if you were somewhere in this scene, where would you be?
I think I'm a little delayed. My connection's not that great.
Oh no!
Oh, where are we now?
So
Picard's got Data's wrist. Data's shaking his head. All critical subcommands are protected, Captain. Then it's over. Mr. Crusher ready at collision course with the Borg ship. Oh yeah, there's his face.
He's like, what? There we go. So, Nigel, if you were in the scene, where would you be? What role would you play?
Probably I'd want to be one of the non-essential people in the back, just typing, scanning, and then in a position where my decisions wouldn't make any huge influential difference.
Sitting there going, if Riker tells us to tells Helm to ram the Borg ship, are we going to be able to get into escape pods in time?
No escape pods in this scenario, my friend. Here's the cutting. Wesley's looking pretty composed there. He's just kind of like, all right.
Did you see that virtual recreation of the inside of the Enterprise that I posted on our Facebook page?
I didn't see that one, but I've seen others. It might actually be the same one. But I'm looking forward to walking through that, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
Is it pretty impressive?
It is pretty impressive. They don't have the whole thing built yet, so you can occasionally, like if you get on a turbo lift and go to the wrong place, you'll fall out of outer space. But
so you can go around yourself. It's not a guided walkthrough.
It is a guided walkthrough, but the guy was walking through something somebody else made.
Oh, okay.
So
cool.
He fell out of the ship a couple of times. But I thought of it because it actually shows where because they used the technical manual to make it rather than the TV show.
Okay.
So the sizes are a little bit different on things, and they show where the escape pods are and what they look like on the inside. Pretty cool.
That sounds pretty cool.
Yep. So they're putting the Borg to sleep.
Well, all you have to do is drop their battery down to about 10%, and the whole thing will just shut down. Just like your cell phone. If I was one of these characters in the scene, I don't think I'd want to be the guy in the background just pushing buttons. I'd want to be the guy who comes out of nowhere replacing the person who just got killed pushing buttons. So the console explodes and another person just magically steps in and takes over. That's the guy I want to be.
And you're in like a t-shirt and boxer shorts.
Exactly.
Like, sorry, I was getting ready for bed.
Because that they never kill the same console twice.
Yeah. I will wear my uniform when I come to work tomorrow, but I figured you wanted me here now.
Right. I love how people are just casually walking up and down these corridors during this battle. Makes absolutely no sense.
At this point, they've been on the Enterprise for how long? They're kind of immune.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Shelby and the crew, they're back on the Borg ship. They're checking things out to make sure they're asleep. And now here's an interesting mistake. So Beverly says if we disconnect him from the vessel, there's no idea on the damages that could be done. But she wasn't listening in on that conversation between Shelby and Riker. It was
probably not. No,
a technical whoopsie. So they're beaming back the folks. They think the ship is going to explode. It's so big. There, Picard's having a seizure. Yay! That is a beautiful explosion.
I love it because they blew something real up and you could see all the pieces of it fly away.
Very realistic, yeah.
Life signs are stable. The DNA around the microcircuit implants returning to normal.
That's pretty quick.
Look at that weird pair of shorts they put him in.
Well, they're Borgs. They're not animals.
Yeah.
Borgs prefer Speedos. Oh, that is really strange. I'm kind of glad the closed captioning is covering it. I can't really make it out. Boy, it really is high def. Look at that. Yeah. So he remembers everything. Well, if you're in Riker's position, the only thing you can really do is make it look like you would do something that Picard would think you would never do.
Yeah,
that's the only way to beat Picard is to do something that he wouldn't guess. He has to outsmart him. Now look at that face patch. That's kind of cool. I wish they went more into the PTSD of of the Borg. They touched a lot of that in the new series, which I found kind of touching. But they kind of left it alone.
Well, they get into it in the episode after this, and that was actually
they do it a lot in First Contact.
Yep.
Do they? Okay. Yeah, that's right. I hated the movies so much.
You did?
Yeah.
I liked it a lot when it came out. It's fallen a little bit.
Point. Sorry, go ahead, Pat.
It's kind of fallen a little bit in my estimation, but I loved it when it first came out.
It interestingly addresses a point you made about the Borg Queen earlier, Sascha, which I'll touch on at the end of the episode.
So here's Picard. He's picking up his tea. He just made the realization that even though he's stepped back into his life, the horrors of everything he's responsible for are catching up with him. And he just has this 100-yard stare where he's not really looking at anything. It's some very painful introspection. And knowing that he's killed a lot of people. In the unofficial autobiography, Picard said he could remember talking to his graduate friends from the academy as captains and watching the ship basically murder his friends. So,
yeah.
Wow, there it is. A very powerful episode.
Yes, indeed.
Holy smokes. I remember when I was watching this, I got a lot of adrenaline out of it. I really enjoyed the kind of the point counterpoint between the Shelby and the Riker, between the Data and the Picard. That was a really nice showdown between those two of just figuring out who had the better wits, I guess you could say. It's really hard to rate because obviously this episode is so big, you have to have it in the picture when you look at the entire breadth of Star Trek episodes. It's kind of like, I would say it's just as important as First Contact and the final episode. I would actually argue that it bridges the old and the new so well. I'm going to give it probably about 5 out of 5. I can't think of anything seriously wrong with it. It really separated itself from other episodes that we've seen in the past, and it has shown that the show has really grown up and matured, and they know how to write and execute a decent Star Trek episode now. How about yourself, Nigel?
Well, as is often my thing when I'm a guest on the show, I'm going to give it a double ranking just to kind of rectify it. As taking this episode and looking at it in the Next Generation as a series, I would give it a 5 out of 5 because, as you pointed out, it's a pivotal episode. It feels like things are different afterwards. It's a very different kind of episode. In the grand scheme of things, it accomplishes so much and changes people in ways moving forward. If I were just to take it as an episode, though, I'd probably give it a 4 out of 5. I think the only thing that knocks off a point for me is that unlike the first Borg episode, as Pat mentioned, we do see the Borg kind of stepping down in their power because we understand them a little better. It's like it's like in a horror movie, once you see the monster, he gets a little less scary than when he's just growling in the dark and you can't really see him, but you know he's there. I would have liked to have seen a little more in the realm of choosing the first officer, but aside from that, no major complaints. It was a really good episode.
Cool. Thank you. And how about you, Pat?
Yeah, I still set it at the episode before it offers a lot more promise than this delivers on, and that's kind of the problem with two-part episodes, especially that are done in this way, is that doing a setup is a lot easier than doing an ending. And I think that without the episode that comes after this, without Family, It's really it's a little weak because the experience Picard goes through is so important, but they make it all about, can Riker do this? And yes, Riker can, but it ends with he gets this field promotion to captain and is content to go back to first officer, and now there's nowhere else for Riker to go. Riker's going to get a lot of stuff done to him throughout the rest of the show. He's going to get put in situations where the big Riker episodes after this are all Riker gets put in a puzzle box and has to figure out how to get out of the puzzle box. They do decide to take him somewhere at the end of the movies, and so there is more to the Riker story, but it doesn't happen on the TV show.
Maybe that's where Deep Space Nine got the whole O'Brien must suffer idea, because there's not much we can do for Riker as advancing him as a person or in career. He's just kind of stuck there. And so what do? Like you say, the puzzle box gets introduced.
Well, when you think about it, though, like you were mentioning earlier, Pat, seeing the Melbourne blown up was sort of a visual thing to Riker that had he gone with that wouldn't have been a good idea. And you could almost see this experience as something that's solidifying in his mind. Maybe I should just stay where I am right now. Because if he had gone with the Melbourne, he probably would have become captain at this point. Essentially, you can almost see this episode as solidifying in the back of his mind. If I do move on, if I do move forward, then I very well could end up in pieces blown up in space. It's almost like getting a visual indicator that that's what's happened, because I imagine in Starfleet you have to go out into space under the assumption that you very well could die, but it's different than actually seeing bodies floating in space. So it could shock him into complacency. That's my only thing.
If I was Riker, I would have definitely thought to myself, wow, I did make the right choice. I'm reading the book, and by the right choice, I mean to stay on the Enterprise and not accept the captaincy of the Melbourne. That's like literally the universe has shown me. If I had gone there, I would have died, or if I hadn't died, I would have felt that I was responsible for leading other people in their deaths, people that I barely knew. I would have had to talk to the parents of crew members that I had lost, that all that I knew about them was what was written in their service reports. I wouldn't have been able to say, like, I knew your son and he did this, he did this. It's just like, well, according to this paper I have in front of me, he was a good guy, and I'm sorry I can't tell you more about him. And I am now reading the book Imzadi by Peter David, which is how Troy and Riker got together. And it's really fascinating because it's all about how Riker's whole thing is that he needs to be in complete control of every situation that he's in. And Deanna is trying to make him aware that that's not necessary for every situation. And he's like, no, it is. I will fight you tooth and nail on that. She's like, so the thing that motivates you the most is being completely in control. Yes, I don't understand why that's a problem.
Well, he picked command as a good option. Yeah. Holy freaking smokes. For continuity's sake, I always kind of wish they took the Battlestar Galactica route with Star Trek. That's true with Next Gen. That's true with Voyager. They kind of did this with Deep Space Nine. And it's that if something happens to somebody, there's continuity. When Lee Adama when Commander Adama got shot, there's about 3 or 4 episodes of Chaos where it just showed him in a hospital bed while the supporting cast were trying to figure out, hey, how do we run the ship and what do we do with this rampant paranoia about who's who and what's going on in the power struggles? How cool would it have been if Picard just took 4 or 5 episodes offline and just you showed him going through therapy or just rebuilding his life on the ship while Riker's taking over. We almost get that with the Brothers episode that's coming up next, where Picard talks about how he was a broken man, and they took everything away from him. But after that was it.
Well, it's fitting within Picard's personality. The most British French guy would want to put a stiff upper lip on things and try and just immerse himself back in his work in order to heal.
And you do see eventually that there are members of the Admiralty that were not in favor of allowing him to stay captain of the ship after that happened. When Nechayev shows up, she is very aware of what happened and does not like that he's still captain of the Enterprise.
Well, I think that kind of does this episode service. I had a lot of fun watching it and reviewing it with you two gentlemen. So
me too.
I had fun too. Yeah, thanks.
Less dry than our coverage of the first part of it.
Yeah. Well, let's see here. What do we got coming up next? So we got Brothers coming out after this episode. Family?
Yeah.
Oh, my bad. I got the name of the episode wrong. I'm using the shorthand. Also, we have several of our shore leave episodes on Two True Freaks. Make sure to go back and listen to those. Some of our favorites are All Dogs Go to Heaven, Back to the Future, and many, many more. I even think, didn't we do what's the dinosaur one? The little kid dinosaur?
Land Before Time.
Land Before Time. That's right. Well, with that being said, let's go ahead and sign out and have a wonderful day.
Why am I interviewing you guys?
So you're the guest.
So Sasha, what's Star Trek?
Hi,
Next
I am the guest.
So Sasha, what is Star Trek?
Seek us out at Next Generation's First Generation at iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube. Music credits include Electric Car by Poddington Bear, Broke for Free, As Colorful as Ever, Star Song by Lee Rosevere, Sweet Potato Pudding by Red Star Martyrs, Telecom, and Glass Android by Lee Rosevere. Audio engineering by Sascha Schaudies. Chief Meme Maker and episode cover credit goes to Matthew Kirschner. Logo and graphic art design credit goes to David Clawwitter. And special thanks to Patrick Delmore for working with other podcasts to make sure the good word gets out.
If you'd like to email the show, you can email us at nextgenfirstgenpod@gmail.com. I've been Patrick Delmore.
And this is Sascha Schaudies. Thank you very much for listening and have a wonderful day.
Good night.